Jordan, appreciate your time, my man. We've known each other for a couple years now. And to most people, you're known as a real estate guy, but the past couple years, you've decided to dive into sports team ownership. Can you kind of talk about that transition and what prompted that interest for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was fortuitous, Malcolm, and thanks for having me here. Um, Looking at the landscape of how I can add value, you know, first and foremost from what my background is, which is real estate. So I I kind of stumbled into working with athletes back in 2016. So this is a long road here. And understood like the special components and privacy and discretion of kind of looking at rental properties for short-term furnished places for athletes to live comfortably. We always talk about like comfort and safety are the
Mhm.
two aspects of what matters there. And that put me into rooms that honestly, I was very lucky to be part of. And those rooms are the athlete room, the athlete that is reporting to practice, to training, to get a physical, whatever it may be, meeting with the people that work at the team that are in the operations department. And there's a trust factor that's built. So just having that role as the person as an independent third party to assist with housing, it put me in rooms that I started to understand, okay, this is a special place to be, not just as, the athlete or the fan or whatever it may be, but also on the other side, the executive level. So, gaining that trust and seeing that me as a pillar of the community can potentially bring some value to a sports team. First of all, Malcolm, through a sponsorship. So that's how I kind of got started. I realized that teams business operations are they're driven by revenue, which comes from ticket sales, selling consumer products, and sponsorships. Those are like the big three. So me as just a again independent third party business person, local pillar of the community, I started by saying, let me get a sponsorship with DC United, with the soccer team. That puts you again in the room that gives you access that other people don't because you're actually paying to be part of, put your name on the team. I had a real estate business. I wanted to put my name on it, and that adds value. And began talking to a couple of the right people. At the time, um, there was a team called Loudoun United, this team right here. So
Mhm.
at the time, Loudoun United was a USL team, but they were part of an MLS ownership group. So they were part of a Major League Soccer ownership group. This was 2022, I want to say.
Mhm.
DC United had to make some changes from their ownership group to separate from the USL. Because what the USL was saying is we make money off of selling franchises. We don't like that we have these teams in our USL top division that are essentially reserve teams of MLS teams.
Mhm.
They're not able to compete against the franchises that we can sell as independent teams. It makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of cities in the US where the soccer growth on the men's side is exploding. So the USL said we have these six teams, I think it was about six teams, that need to separate from their MLS ownership and need to disconnect. So at that moment, I was serving as a sponsor and housing coordinator with DC United through a few relationships at the ownership level. And they went to their sponsors and they said, hey, maybe this is something that you want to contribute, some money to have an ownership stake at Loudoun.
Mhm.
Because they knew I was willing to spend money.
Yeah.
And this created like a diversion into me being some having some control as a minority owner in a soccer team, be it not at DC United. That's not something that I'm, in a position that I could afford as just an independent business person. But at this level, I could, and that was kind of the stepping stone into where I got to be. And not only that, Malcolm, I think from my standpoint, I didn't want to be a silent kind of minority owner. I wanted to say, how else can I contribute, knowing that sponsorships, consumer products, and ticketing are so important? How can I be active on that level as a pillar of the community to now look at branding into this team that I now have an ownership stake into? And I kind of dove into building my brand through having a minority stake in this team as like a sideways way to attract other business owners to support, this team financially.
For sure. So it was kind of like this natural evolution of you wanting to be involved with DC United and then propelling you to have ownership in these other teams that are affiliated with the DC United brand.
Yep.
When you kind of peel back the curtain and look at the USL as a league, obviously there's a lot of growth potential. There's lower entry points for investors. What was like the most appealing aspect outside of kind of just like being able to promote your brand that interests you with this investment in this ownership group and having a stake in these teams?
Yeah, I think any class of investment, the biggest risk that you have is it going to zero.
Mm,
As long as it doesn't go to zero, you're okay. So seeing the growth of soccer in the US, looking through the lens of the World Cup is coming here,
mhm,
which we already knew, the risk for me of something going to zero was almost non-existent. You know, if I lose everything in my stake, whatever I contribute, there's many, many more smarter people than me that will lose a heck of a lot more,
mhm,
and they're not going to allow that to happen. So being in this pool of collaboration, because it's professional sports is really interesting because you're competing on the field, but you're collaborating behind the scenes to ensure that everybody has success.
mhm.
You're only as strong as your weakest link. The cliche statement there, and we see it in the major sports. With revenue share and stuff. There's always those teams that aren't spending enough money, and they're getting pummeled because the other teams are like, "Hey, let's carry our weight here,"
Yeah.
right? So the the nonlinear aspect of how investing in professional sports makes sense. And obviously, I follow you on all of your channels, Malcolm, so you understand valuations of sports teams do not go down.
Mm,
They don't. So it's a low risk play. There's tax benefits to investing in the teams because operational costs are very expensive. And there's ways that you can benefit from that by putting more money, investing more money into a team. There's ways that you can, take some losses in your tax portfolio as well to kind of offset there. So willingness to spend and write checks to make your product better and get more excitement around it. There's always like some offsets for that. It's kind of like owning a house. You're getting to write off that interest.
mhm,
So USL is it's kind of an unlimited market. There's different levels of professional leagues, and we'll just talk about the men's side first. I don't see the risk of going to zero, and I feel like when I choose is I invested when I was about 40 years old. So if I live a healthy lifestyle, I hope that I'm somewhat have some good years ahead of me, you know?
mhm,
Um, so when I look at what I want to invest in, especially from a real estate background, I want something that I can go and I can see and touch. And I have there's controls over the product. So it's not like commercial real estate where you invest into a parking lot and you get that return. And it's great, but it's a parking lot.
Yeah.
It's a parking lot or a storage unit. People will do that, and it's no problems with that. People get very wealthy, way more wealthy than me, investing in those types of vehicles. I think as a fan of sports, I was a mediocre Division III soccer player, so I understand the sport, so which is important. Just being able to evaluate how the product is doing and understanding that just from being a layperson and seeing it is exciting to me. And being able to go to games and hosting events and finding diamonds in the rough from a soccer playing perspective that can come play on these teams from overseas and things like that, giving these opportunities, which we'll get into more on the women's side,
Hmm.
is something that appealed to me. And I like spending time in areas that I'm invested into and I care about. So standing on a soccer field, even if I'm not necessarily fully involved in that, is cool. And even with you spent a game with me at DC United. We got to go on the sideline. It's just like a neat experience.
Yeah,
Just
really
to,
is.
just to be very, if you really want to simplify it, it's a neat experience, and that's something that I care about.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely, man. And you alluded to this, but like I want to kind of shift and talk about how the DC Power deal came about, the women's side, because I think women's sports as a whole is kind of reaching this inflection point, and obviously there's a lot of attention and eyeballs there. So how did that opportunity kind of come about for you and your involvement within that club as
yeah.
well?
So, so the USL, I'll give a little background here for anyone listening that would need some understanding of this. National Women's Soccer League has been around about 10 years. It's a first division sanctioned women's soccer league. Many believe it's the best league in the world. Um, 14 teams. So 14 teams, 25 to 28 roster spots. That includes some international. There was comparatively to men's soccer, I think between the first division, second division, and third division, I want to say when you start looking at the salaries comparably to NWSL, about 110 men's teams to 14 women's teams.
Mm.
Astronomically, kind of a joke compared to the amount of women that play college soccer
Yeah.
and are looking to make a career out of being a pro player. So the USL basically said, okay, we have these we have these franchise agreements that we want to create this league. A lot of our men's teams are very interested in the women's side as well. So they created a sanctioned first division league that played its first year last year with 8 teams. So now you go from 14 teams to 22 teams, basically overnight, creating many more playing opportunities for female soccer players to play at the next level, to play professionally. Based off the USL's relationship with Loudoun, with talk about real estate, if you don't have a training facility, you don't have a stadium, Malcolm, you're struggling in
Yeah.
professional sports. So those are the anchor objects essentially that are needed to have a successful first year pro sports team. We have that here in DC. We have a training facility in Leesburg, Virginia, and we have multiple stadiums that can support a first division sanctioned soccer team. Essentially needs capacity 5,000 fans. So Audi Field and Segra, we just needed to choose which one made the most sense for us.
Hmm.
Um, so once the franchise was agreed to that DC would get a second team because, as you know, there's a very successful women's soccer team already here, the Washington Spirit. They already play at Audi Field, and they actually already train at the same training facility. We don't want to compete with the NWSL. The goal is to have a parallel league to again create more opportunities for women to sign professional contracts.
Hmm.
And the cool part of that is you start to see the leagues interact with each other. So I'm here in an executive role. I'm club president of the team as well. We're communicating with the other league, the NWSL, on how we can give more of their players some visibility, some playing opportunities. There's a player, Sam Meza, who just premiered for the U.S. women's national team, the full team. That was a Seattle Reign player that played an entire fall season in Dallas Trinity during their inaugural fall. She was probably the best player in the league. She did not, you know, she chose, I should say, to play in our side, our league, again, first division. So all the sanctioning is the same. Lesser sponsorships, obviously less star power that's expected, but became really a star player and is now probably going to be featured at that full national team on the women's side at the US level for many years. Um, Played at UNC, these types of things. So with my involvement, really simple, how do we put together a competitive team in the shortest amount of time possible? The best way to do that is you utilize people that are already in the space. So there was some DC United ownership, there was some independent ownership. We brought in a few star athletes. Angel Reese's the most well-known. Angel came in and saw the value and decided to invest in the team. She's from Baltimore. So that was really exciting when we kind of knew that we had something there.
Hmm.
Somebody of that caliber said, "Hey, I'm interested in this." And she was very much like her decision to invest in the team as well. Um, so my involvement it's kind of a boring answer, but because I had a couple years experience on the men's side and seeing how we could build out Loudoun, having involvement in DC United, um, the selection of kind of me to be that president role to oversee all the operations and work hand in hand with some other very experienced people. Danita Johnson's heavily involved from DC United, who's
Sure.
their president, business operations, and does a fabulous job to help us.
Yeah, she's
Um,
incredible.
yeah, so we have a lot of support with this. I happen to be the one that's kind of responsible to ensure that compliance and everything is done correctly. But really, like it's just all sports worlds are, as you know, Malcolm, it's a very small world.
Yeah,
And if you're kind of good at it and you know how to do things and you operate really well with other ownership groups, with the league, and with the players too. We want this to be a player-centric league, and support the players. You're kind of there already, and you just make sure you hit those deadlines when they're needed. So,
absolutely. What are some of the, I guess, unforeseen challenges of being a team owner? Because a lot of people look from the outside. Obviously, sports is a sexy industry. You get to be around the players, athletes, it's star power, but there's a lot of challenges and operational hurdles that you have to deal with. What are some of those things
yeah.
that you kind of face that most people wouldn't even realize being a team owner?
So the operational challenges is probably a number one. I talked to, it's funny, crossing over into what I do in the real estate side. I was actually talking to one of my real estate clients who plays for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Hmm.
He was at a Shark Tank type of incubator where they were pitching him as has a good, made a lot of money in the NFL. It's about a 10-year vet. So he was asking me about this. He's like, they were pitching us on using analytics to invest into the English Premier League, to put the best possible team out there, utilize the best players, go find these players in smaller countries, and really decide who's going to be that sell on player. In soccer, you can sell on players, which means that you can sign them at a young age for very little money. And because it's an international sport, if they get transferred, that transfer fee follows them throughout their career. You get a piece of that every single time. So that's part of the model is if you can be a small club, sign some really talented players, 16, 17 years old. By the time they play their whole career, that could be tens and tens of millions of dollars for your club. But what I told him, Malcolm, I said, look, that's great. If you can't figure out how to like feed your players or pay for transportation or have like a good partnership with a apparel company or go get sponsors or have the right type of social media and stay away from like scandals and things like that, you're not going to go anywhere. So the actual product on the field and like the sporting department is that's step like 100. So if somebody's coming to you and they're pitching ownership based off of performance on the field, they sure as heck be part of some established team that's been around for dozens and dozens of years and has their own training facilities and has their own sports medicine partnership and their stadium and their fan base. Like these, all these core pieces have to come together before you can even think about the results on the field. So the biggest challenge to me is those revenue drivers.
Hmm.
As I mentioned, just coming up with a brand. Like we came up with this brand that was basically out of thin air. So think about just, I think the best example right now in women's sports is the Valkyries in Golden State.
Yeah.
They've come out of the gate unbelievable, right? Selling out their games, brand equity through the roof, being in the conversation, selling merchandise. It's crazy. That is so impressive to me as a sports owner. Like I can't think of anything more impressive than having being that expansion team that literally has no brand equity whatsoever and dominates.
Hmm.
Like good for them. I'd love to get in a room with the executives who's ever in charge over there. And I apologize, I don't know who that is because they're probably so busy with formulating that business strategy and executing, they don't have time to even take any credit for it, to tell you the
Hmm.
truth, because that is a ton of time.
Yeah.
So the challenge to me is having revenue drivers that have people care about your product to support it, and then looking at building, the future of your team and actually performing on the pitch. So, so I would always start with trying to ensure that my business operations and everything are under control and that people care. Because like to me, I say this a lot, like the opposite of love, it's not hate, it's apathy,
Yeah.
right? It's apathy. Love, hate is very passionate compared to just like love is. If people don't care, then what's the point, you
Hmm.
know? So we need to get people to care. And I think that that's like a number one when it comes to my role as the owner.
That's great insight, man. I want to touch on real estate before I let you go here because I'm a big believer in mixed use venues being the next like big frontier of sports.
Oh
I've
yeah.
talked about it numerous times. So what are your thoughts on like this whole seeing a lot of like redevelopment around creating this whole holistic experience for fans? What's your perspective on the future of real estate and how that kind of ties into the overall fan experience?
It's always on the conversation. It's a really good point. I think stadium locations, we're seeing it here in DC with redevelopment of RFK.
Yep.
That mixed use if the local community supports it, and it's very controversial because you always say, okay, these owners are greedy. They're asking for this public funding. But the reason they're doing that, Malcolm, is because the owners have created a product that they've spent a lot of money on
Mm.
that's a central sports and entertainment like hub that will drive people to invest into it. So working hand in hand with the local government or community, whatever, it's paramount because otherwise, as you see with RFK as a Washingtonian, it just sits there with really nothing going on,
Yeah,
you know? So
for years.
years. It's bad. It's bad. So I don't see any, and again, I'm a little biased, but I don't see any type of greed or anything if there's a partnership with funding and private money that go into redeveloping or developing stadium projects. Because it's not just the mixed use, you're also getting state-of-the-art training facilities that often are given to the city to use for youth events, outdoor concerts. Um, you know, the turf fields are invaluable for year-round activities that come there. Businesses investing, small businesses, restaurants, like there's only so much real estate around. Why not go into a hub that you know is going to just attract tons of people? We can get into the gambling piece of it too, but I'm not gonna touch that. But that it's the world we live in, right? To have, have like a piece that's also having the gaming aspect to it. And we're not talking about like anything seedy or anything. It's just a reality of having that entertainment space. And we've seen it throughout all the different stadium projects. So if you have a really strong development arm that works hand in hand with you as an ownership group, it makes a huge difference.
Mm.
So um I would I would easily support, any type of stadium projects that really become the anchor of the cities. Like if you think about Pittsburgh, it's one of the most beautiful stadiums in the country,
Mm.
right? And
It's
Pittsburgh is a
Steelers,
steel
yeah.
city. It's a blue collar city. Like I'm a Pennsylvania guy, I'm from Philly guy, but it's like that can make a difference to the local population of that city that embrace something and have something to go to. So um it's it's absolutely top of mind. It's absolutely a subject that is relevant. And if anybody says otherwise, they're lying to you.
Mm. For
So,
sure.
um, so I think, DC, it's already happened. Buzzard Point next to Audi Field, Nats Park with the Navy Yard. If you remember that 20 years ago, wasn't much going on there, right?
Yeah, you couldn't
That
even go down there.
couldn't go down there. No, it's like some fisherman wharf thing, whatever. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's housing. There's a lot of there's obviously hotels housing both luxury and low income, kind of mixed use together. So there's the affordability. We'll call it affordable housing. I apologize. But there's restrictions on what can be built there, and if it happens the right way and it's pretty organic coming together around that stadium anchor, it's phenomenal.
Mm.
And people love just going to live sporting events, and they're getting more and more exciting. Like these stadiums are very state of the art.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Jordan, man, this has been great, super insightful. Always appreciate your time. Can you let people know where they can learn more about you and everything that you're doing on the real estate front, but also on the sports front as well?
sure, yeah. I mean, I'm busy with everything. So real estate, sports, LinkedIn, Jordan Stewart, find me. Um, I try to stay active, not as active as you, Malcolm, but try to stay active. And I support a lot of people on LinkedIn. I actually find a lot of good partnerships on that front with things that I care about. And then, my social media is tailored towards a mix of real estate, soccer, my kids. It's a public account, next move Jordan. But I connect with that. I control my own direct messages. I don't have somebody that does that for me. It's all me. So try to connect with people as much as I can through the social channels. And honestly, just love giving opportunities. If you have an idea, I'd love to support it, or give some insight on it. And obviously, if you want to support this women's first division team, DC Power, we play at Audi Field. Our first game is August 30th at home. We have 14 home games and plenty of tickets available. So I'd love to, create some new fans as well. The team is going to be very competitive this year. So
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Jordan. I'll definitely, whenever I get back home, gonna definitely take you up on that and catch a game as well. But thank you, man. Appreciate this.
absolutely cool.